Hey, welcome back to my channel. Now that we're through the New Line years and the 2009 remake slash sequel, I consider it a sequel, but whatever. We'll go back to the original 1980 Friday the 13th. Now, Sean Cunningham was no stranger to horror. He had produced The Last House on the Left, which was directed by Wes Craven in the early 70s. But after that, he tried to go move into like family oriented comedies, these like low budget family comedy movies. Horror is not Sean Cunningham's passion. He's even said so in interviews. Now he's found a way to make money off of it, and that's the American dream. But he's not as passionate about it as some other directors were over the years. But after the failure of some of these family comedies, and the success of Halloween, he thought to himself and his writing partner Victor Miller, who wrote Friday the 13th, he said, "Let's do a horror movie, a low budget horror movie, and we'll see what we can do with that." And all he had in mind was the title, Friday the 13th. He didn't have a story in mind, didn't know what it was going to be even. He even says this if you've watched the documentary Crystal Lake Memories, or even there's some other little documentaries about Friday the 13th that he says this in. He says it multiple times. So he took a full page ad out in Variety, just the title, Friday the 13th, coming soon. And from that ad, he was able to raise $500,000, $550,000 to make the movie. Because the first movie is totally independent. Paramount wasn't involved yet at this stage of production or pre-production. Actually, who gave the money was these guys who own some movie theaters up in Massachusetts, the Boston area. And they gave Sean Cunningham the money to go make Friday the 13th. And these guys actually have been involved. They continue to be involved with the franchise through at least part 5. I'm not sure of the involvement past then. I think by that point Paramount was pretty much the only game in town at that point. I think these guys kind of went away. I mean, they got their money every time a movie was made, but they didn't have any creative say in any of the films after that. But so out of that, he raised the money he needed to go make it. They found a camp in New Jersey, not too far from where I grew up, in Blairstown, New Jersey. They found a summer camp. Obviously, they were going to be filming in the off season. And I grew up in Pennsylvania, but we weren't far from Jersey. This area is not too far from where I grew up, a couple hours maybe. So they started looking at casting, but the first crew member hired, besides obviously Victor Miller, who was already wrote a script at this point, was Tom Savini. They realized they needed to have some special effects artist because they have some kills, and they liked Tom Savini's work from Dawn of the Dead. I mean, who doesn't? And the man, well, went on to become a legend in the horror industry. So they hired Tom Savini. Was the first crew member hired for the movie. Then they hired Adriana King to be the final girl, Alice. They hired Kevin Bacon in there and some other young, talented actors, up-and-coming actors. Because everybody in the movie is kind of like, this is like their first movie. A lot of them. And you could tell some of the acting is not the best. But you try to give them slack. It's their first big movie, or first movie period, and it's a lower budgeted film. Although they had $500,000, which back then was not a bad budget to have. And then they needed a Mrs. Voorhees, and they wanted to have at least a decently recognizable actress play that role. And they went out to some other people. They didn't take it. They came to Betsy Palmer. At first, Betsy Palmer said no, and then, well, she said, "I'll do it if you give me this much money." And they agreed to pay her the money she wanted to do the film. And Betsy Palmer, if you've seen interviews with her now, the woman has passed away. Rest in peace. But she even said when she read the script, she thought it was a piece of shit. But she said she needed the money. And she thought, well, nobody will ever see it, so who cares? I'll take the money, do it the best I can with it, and that'll be it. Not realizing years later that became this huge phenomenon. Like, she was taken by surprise later on when she was getting requests to do conventions and all this stuff. But I digress. Let's go back to Friday the 13th. So with the cast and crew locked, they went to Jersey and started filming. Now, funny enough, Tom Savini and his assistant Tasso stayed in one of the cabins, and they never left the camp. The cast and crew stayed at a hotel close by, but Tom Savini stayed at the camp. well, I'm going to spoil this movie. It's bounced in 1980, and if you're a horror fan and you've never seen it, shame on you. You should have seen this by now. Not that it's the best movie in the series, or even like this is not Halloween, but it's a minor classic, and it started a whole franchise that's still around today. Well, if they ever get the legal issues sorted out. The beginning of the movie, where we see these two kids, two camp counselors, who kind of sneak away from this function that's going on, and they sneak upstairs to go fool around, this boy and girl. And here we go with the first Halloween ripoff, homage, whatever. See, the point of view is somebody coming up the steps and looking at them and getting closer and closer. The couple notice whoever this is. They don't say a name. They don't say anything like that. They don't give anything away. And he's like, oh, we're just come up here to have a little fun. And then he gets stabbed in the stomach. And the girl starts crying and screaming. And she starts backing away. And the camera gets closer and closer. And we cut to our credit sequence. Now, obviously this moment was inspired by Halloween. But there is a movie called Bay of Blood, directed by Mario Bava, that had come out in the early 70s. It's an Italian film. Many people claim, I am not one of them, I am just saying this for some reference and some trivia, say that, and I've seen Bay of Blood, I actually own it. I've only ever watched it a few times, but they say that Sean Cunningham had to have gotten inspiration from Bay of Blood because the movies are very similar. And now, coming from, I've seen the movie, I will say Bay of Blood, Friday the 13th does have a lot of the same things Bay of Blood has in it. Sean Cunningham, even in the documentary, says that he was unaware of Bay of Blood until after he made Friday the 13th. Who knows? But it is very similar to Bay of Blood. Now we're introduced to some of our camp counselors. We're introduced to Alice, Steve Christie, the gentleman who's reopening Camp Crystal Lake, which none of the town folk seem to be happy about, especially Crazy Ralph. He's the older gentleman on the bike who keeps yelling, it's got a death curse. You're all going to die, and stuff like that. The town thinks there's a curse on the lake, too, at least some people in the town. And we show Steve Christie trying to fix up the cabins, and they say about how the kids are showing up soon. They got to get the camp ready. And we see Kevin Bacon's character and some of the other ones. And then we're introduced to Annie. She's hitchhiking through town, trying to get to Camp Crystal Lake. She's going to be their cook. She goes into a small little diner in town, asks if somebody can give her a ride out to Camp Crystal Lake. And this is where we're first introduced to Ralph, because he goes, it's got a death curse. And this gentleman who drives an oil truck says, yeah, I'll take you out there. I can drop you off by there. I can't take you right to it, but I'll drop you off by there. And he starts saying things about she should quit, that they think Camp Crystal Lake is jinxed, that they've tried to open it several times and bad things have happened. And being a young, idealistic woman, she's like, you're crazy. It's all nonsense. And he drops her off, and she starts walking towards Camp Crystal Lake. Along comes his vehicle, and she stops and picks her up, and she goes along for the ride. And she's like, okay, right here, I have to get off right here. And the vehicle speeds up, and whoever's driving won't let her out. And she jumps out and starts running through the woods. And whoever's in the vehicle starts following her, and finally she gets her throat slit, and she's dead. From here on out, I mean, the makeup effects all look great. Tom Savini is a master at this stuff. Obviously, after this movie, he did Creepshow, The Prowler, Friday the 13th Part 4. Oh my God, I can't even think of them all. Day of the Dead, which is the makeup effects in that movie are incredible. Two Evil Eyes, Monkey Shines. I mean, he's done a lot of movies, and he went into acting. Obviously, most people would remember him from Dusk Till Dawn. He played Sex Machine in that movie. But anyway, back to Friday the 13th. From there on out, it's basically somebody's killing the camp counselors off one by one. Kevin Bacon has a great kill in it. One girl gets an axe in the head. It all looks cool. And funny enough, on the Blu-ray box set, there actually is an uncut version of Friday the 13th. I've just watched it. It does add a few seconds of gore here and there, but really the theatrical cut, you get most of it, honestly. So. Finally, everybody's dead, and the only person left is Alice. And that's when Mrs. Voorhees shows up. Alice has discovered everybody's dead, and all of a sudden his vehicle shows up, and this woman gets out that we've never seen until this point. Mrs. Voorhees in a sweater and, jeans and stuff. And at first, she's very sweet. and trying to calm Alice down, tell her I'm here to help. But the more she talks, the more batshit crazy she seems. I mean, she did see her son did drown, but obviously this woman has some major mental problems. And before we know it, Mrs. Voorhees is stalking Alice, and then we come to our final confrontation on the beach of Camp Crystal Lake, where Alice grabs the machete, runs up to Mrs. Voorhees, and cuts her head off in a glorious slow-mo shot. And it's all filmed nicely. I mean, it looks cool, especially with the music from Harry Manfredini. I mean, the classic Friday the 13th score. Obviously, the makeup effects and the kills save this movie. The plot's nothing great. Some of the acting is not that good, although, like, again, give excuse to the actors. This is a lot of their first movie. And, their first... It's a learning experience, right? Sean Cunningham, it's nice enough looking movie. I mean, Sean Cunningham's a decent director. Is he a John Carpenter? No. But he's a decent enough director. So I'm not going to, take him too much to task. He's a competent enough director. This movie's not the best one in the franchise. Obviously, I've made my thoughts known on that. I think Part 4 is the best one in the franchise. I would even say 2 is even better than this one by a little bit. 3 is pretty good, but 4 is definitely the best in my mind. But I would give the first Friday the 13th a 6.75. I don't think it's quite good enough to make it to 7. There's some things that hold it back. Mainly the story's not that interesting. It's really not. I mean, it's just there for kids to get killed. And I understand that's what they were going for. And now, do I consider this a classic? No. It's a minor classic, only because what it represents going forward. And it did, between Halloween and then the success of this one, especially with the success of this one, a slew of slasher films came out after this. I mean, New Year's Evil, He Knows You're Alone, Terror Train, Prom Night, The Prowler, Summer Party Massacre, House on Sorority Row. I mean, there's so many slasher movies that came out after this. My Bloody Valentine, oh, that's a pretty good one. I mean, there's so many that came out after this. It did inspire. I mean, studios realized, we can spend $500,000 million and make a ton of money. We're in. Now, Paramount picked this movie up to distribute, and the movie did make $39.7 million. It was a huge hit, considering the budget. And then Paramount, as we know, released the next Part 8, and then they came back for the remake with New Line. Gene Siskel, funny enough, hated this movie so much they gave away the ending on Siskel and Ebert's review show. And they always give the Friday the 13th movie shit, saying that they're degrading the women. And I'm like, especially the first movie, I'm like, well, Alice is the only one left alive, and she kills the killer at the end. How is that degrading the women? She persevered. She was strong enough to get out of there and win the day. I never understood that argument, but that's what they said back then. But yeah, I would give it a 6.75 out of 10. I don't do that as too many 3/4 of a point, but for this one I will. I don't think it's quite good enough to get to 7. There's some issues there. I recognize its place in horror history for sure, but I think some of the sequels are better. But that is it for me for the original Friday the 13th movie. If you like this review, hit the thumbs up, subscribe button. You can share it if you want. I don't care. Leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on the original Friday the 13th movie. And I will be back soon with part 2, 3, and 4. Thank you and have a great day. See ya. Bye.